I never planned to speak. I planned to endure. I planned to stay quiet, to survive by shrinking, by letting moments pass without naming them. Silence felt safer than truth. Silence felt like oxygen in a room where saying the wrong thing could cost you everything. My Aunty Margaret was the reasonable one. That's what they called her. Calm, level-headed, the one who could smooth anything over, the one everyone leaned on when emotions ran hot and tempers got sharp. What they didn't say out loud was how convenient she was, how easy it was to hand her the mess and walk away clean. The night everything cracked was supposed to be simple. A family gathering, neutral ground, food on the table, polite conversation, the usual forced warmth. But the air was already tight when we walked in. Smiles that didn't reach eyes, arms folded like shields, conversations breaking into whispers the moment someone else entered the room. It didn't take long before the pattern returned. Someone pulled Margaret aside and asked her to pass along a message. Again. Soft words wrapped around a sharp request. "You're good at this," they said. "You know how to explain things." Then the other side did the same thing, as if she were a hallway between two locked doors. No one wanted to talk directly. Everyone wanted her to absorb the impact. The room felt smaller as it happened. Every chair too close, every sound too loud. Resentment hung in the corners like smoke. And then someone laughed. Not a cruel laugh, not openly. A joke, tossed casually into the room like it was harmless. "Well," they said, grinning, "if anyone can keep track of all this, it's Margaret. She's basically the family secretary." The laughter came fast, too easy. I watched her smile freeze. I watched the sound hit her before the meaning did. Then it landed, sharp, precise, the kind of joke that tells the truth while pretending not to. The laughter sliced deeper than shouting ever could. Every eye turned to her, expectant, comfortable, waiting for her to play along, to smooth it over, to accept the role with grace. That was the part that hurt the most. Not the joke, the assumption. I saw her shoulders tense. I saw her breath catch. Humiliation settled in her chest like a weight she hadn't agreed to carry but somehow always did. It was heavy, quiet, crushing. No one defended her. Not the people she had protected, not the ones whose words she had softened, whose fights she had cleaned up, whose reputations she had preserved by staying neutral. They looked away, or worse, they smiled. The silence that followed was unbearable, thick, heavy, louder than any argument. It pressed against her from all sides, forcing the truth into focus. In that silence, something shifted. She understood it then. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't appreciation gone wrong. This wasn't accidental. It was exploitation, dressed up as praise. And for the first time, she didn't reach for words to fix it. I need to step back because before the family labeled my Aunty Margaret, she was already carrying a role she never volunteered for. Long before she became the reasonable one, she was just a young woman trying to survive the emotional weather of the people around her. Growing up, she became the translator, not of language, but of feelings. When adults fought, she softened their words. When tempers flared, she explained intentions no one bothered to clarify. She learned how to read a room before she learned how to rest. She learned who was safe to approach and who needed space. And every time she helped calm things down, she was rewarded, not with love, but with relief. That was the lesson she absorbed early. Peacemaking earned conditional love, approval that lasted only as long as the conflict stayed quiet, as long as everyone else was comfortable. I remember watching her smooth over arguments she never started. She would step in gently, her voice careful, her face composed, carrying responsibility that didn't belong to her. People leaned on her because she didn't push back, because she listened, because she absorbed what others refused to hold. Family members trusted her with their secrets, late-night confessions, private grievances, words whispered only to her. But that trust didn't come with respect. In public, she was overlooked. Her opinions were brushed aside, her contributions minimized. She was useful in the shadows, invisible in the light. Privately, they praised her. "We don't know what we'd do without you. You're the only one who understands." But publicly, she was dismissed, spoken over, joked about, reduced to a role instead of recognized as a person. I watched her swallow her own needs again and again. She'd cancel plans, ignore exhaustion, suppress hurt, just to keep everyone else calm. She'd smile through disappointment. She'd tell herself it was easier this way. Kinder, more mature. Holidays were the worst. Tables filled with tension, not food. Old resentments resurfacing, voices rising. And when things fell apart, the blame somehow landed on her. Why didn't she fix it? Why didn't she step in sooner? Why wasn't she better at keeping the peace? She started to believe something dangerous, that being useful meant being safe, that if she stopped helping, she'd be discarded, that her value depended on how much chaos she could absorb without breaking. Over time, the toll showed itself quietly, exhaustion disguised as patience, weariness mistaken for wisdom. She was always tired, but she told herself it was normal. She was always giving, but no one noticed the cost. The loneliness crept in slowly, being needed by everyone but chosen by no one, being central to every problem but absent from every solution, surrounded by people, yet profoundly alone. And the cruelest part was this: she didn't realize she was being trained, conditioned, shaped into a role that benefited everyone else. She thought she was trusted. She didn't see that she was being used. The demands didn't arrive all at once. They crept in, quietly, until her time no longer felt like her own. Every disagreement, every misunderstanding, every emotional mess somehow landed at her feet. People stopped asking if she could help and started assuming she would. The phone calls came late at night, voices low, urgent, impatient. "Can you handle this?" they'd say, as if she were a switch that could be flipped, as if sleep, peace, or boundaries were luxuries she didn't need. She'd listen in the dark, holding the phone, absorbing frustration that wasn't hers. Each side twisted her words and hurled them back at the other. What she said gently became sharp by the time it reached its target. Context was stripped away, intent was ignored, and when the message landed badly, the blame came straight back to her. "You didn't explain it right. You took their side. You always do this." No matter what she said, she was accused of bias. If she softened the truth, she was dishonest. If she spoke plainly, she was cruel. If she stayed neutral, she was evasive. There was no winning, only surviving. I remember the confrontation, both sides in the same room, voices rising, eyes locked on her. They demanded explanations, timelines, clarifications, answers she didn't owe. She stood there, cornered, forced to defend conversations she never started, conflicts she never fueled. Her chest tightened before every gathering after that. Anxiety set in long before the door opened. She rehearsed responses in her head, anticipating attacks, bracing for impact. What once felt like family now felt like a battlefield. Then came the realization, quiet, devastating. No solution would ever satisfy them, because resolution wasn't the goal. Control was. As long as she stayed in the middle, they never had to face each other. She noticed how conflict bonded them, how arguing gave them purpose, how pointing fingers created alliances, and how, in the middle of it all, she stood alone, necessary, but isolated. When she stayed silent, they assumed agreement. When she paused, they filled the space with their own expectations. Her quiet was never respected. It was consumed. And that's when it hit her. This role had no end date, no exit clause, no reward waiting at the finish line. It would continue until she did something no one expected. She realized the only way it would stop was if she stopped. The phone call came when she least expected it, not late enough to feel like an emergency, not early enough to be polite, just enough to catch her off guard. She answered without thinking, still conditioned to respond. She didn't speak at first. She listened. Two relatives were on the line together, voices casual, unguarded. They didn't realize she could hear everything. They talked about her like she wasn't there, like she was a tool sitting between them, not a person holding the phone. "She'll handle it," one of them said, almost amused. "She always does," the other replied. "That's why we keep her in the middle." The words didn't rush at her. They settled, slowly, deliberately. She heard them admit they used her on purpose, that they fed her just enough information to control the flow, that keeping her busy kept them protected from each other. The shock wasn't loud. It was cold, clean, precise. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't misunderstanding. It was strategy. Adao. They believed she would never walk away. They said it out loud. They talked about her loyalty like it was guaranteed, like gravity, like something they didn't have to earn. Anger flared for a moment, sharp and hot. Then it burned out. What followed was something far more dangerous. Calm. She didn't confront them. She didn't interrupt. She didn't expose herself. She hung up the phone and made a decision that would shift everything. She stopped responding. Oh, no explanations, no emotional labor, no late-night calls returned, no messages clarified. Silence replaced availability, and the power moved instantly. Her phone lit up. One message, then another, then 10. Questions piled up unanswered. Requests turned urgent. Urgency turned frantic. Confusion spread first, then panic. Their mediator was gone. The buffer disappeared. The shield they hid behind vanished, and suddenly they were forced to face each other, directly, unfiltered. That's when it happened. An apology came through, short, careful, no instructions attached, no task implied, just words, real ones, the kind she'd never received before. She saw it then, the leverage she never knew she had. It wasn't her words, it wasn't her effort, it was her absence. For the first time, she chose distance over explanation, and in that space, she finally took control. The next family gathering came faster than I expected. Invitations were polite, too polite, like nothing had happened, like her silence was a phase they assumed would pass. She agreed to go, not to fix anything, but to end something. Suck. She arrived without the emotional armor she used to wear. No rehearsed apologies, no calming smile, no readiness to absorb impact, just stillness, just presence. I watched relatives glance at her waiting for the familiar shift, waiting for her to take her place in the middle, to start translating tension into comfort. Conversations stalled, as if someone had forgotten their lines. When the first disagreement surfaced, all eyes moved to her, instinctive, expectant. She didn't move. Instead, she spoke calmly, publicly, clearly. Her voice didn't shake. "I'm not getting involved," she said. "No edge, no heat, just fact. This isn't my conflict." There were no accusations in her words, no blame, no emotional charge they could twist. She stated boundaries the way one states a truth that doesn't require permission. The room shifted. Discomfort spread across faces as the conflict sat where it belonged, unmanaged, exposed. People fidgeted, cleared their throats, tried to redirect the tension back to her. She didn't take it. Without her smoothing the edges, they were forced to confront each other directly. Voices faltered, statements lost their polish. The dysfunction they hid behind her suddenly had nowhere to go. That's when the accusation started. "You've changed? You're being difficult. This isn't like you." She listened. Then she responded, not with emotion, but with evidence. She referenced messages, dates, timelines, calmly, methodically. She repeated their own words back to them exactly as they were sent. No commentary, no interpretation. The truth did the work for her. Their narrative collapsed under its own weight. The image of her as the problem fractured in real time. Confusion replaced confidence. Defensiveness turned inward. And I saw it, the humiliation move, slide off her shoulders and land where it belonged. She didn't argue. She didn't demand understanding. She stood up, collected her things, and walked out. She never raised her voice. The silence after she left was absolute, not the kind filled with relief, but the kind that exposes everything that was being hidden. No one rushed to fill it. No one knew how. Without her presence, the noise had nowhere to go. Some relationships collapsed almost immediately. Without her translating, soothing, and absorbing the tension, old conflicts surfaced raw and unresolved. Arguments that once passed through her now exploded unchecked. People who only knew how to communicate through her found they had nothing left to say. Others tried a different approach. Messages arrived carefully worded, stripped of urgency. They asked to talk, not to offload. They approached her as an equal, not a buffer. For the first time, reconciliation was offered without expectation of labor. She refused roles disguised as apologies. "I miss you" didn't mean anything if it came with conditions. "I didn't mean it like that" wasn't enough if it led back to the same demands. She listened, but she didn't bend. With distance came space, time she didn't have to give away, peace she didn't have to negotiate, emotional room to breathe without bracing for impact. She reclaimed parts of herself that had been occupied for years. Guilt tried to return. It whispered that she was selfish, that she was breaking the family, that she owed them more, but guilt couldn't survive without access, and she no longer offered it a doorway. The changes showed in her body before her mind caught up. She slept through the night, her breathing steadied, the constant tension in her shoulders eased. For the first time in years, rest didn't feel earned, it felt allowed. She began rebuilding an identity that didn't revolve around obligation. She asked herself what she wanted, not what was needed of her. She discovered preferences she'd never explored, desires she'd postponed, boundaries she'd never named. Respect arrived late, but it arrived. Only after access was gone. Only after her absence forced recognition of her worth. The irony wasn't lost on her. She chose carefully which connections were worth maintaining. Not out of resentment, but clarity. Some bridges didn't need rebuilding. Others required new terms. She finally understood that walking away wasn't abandonment. It was self-preservation. And from that point on, her peace was no longer negotiable. If you're watching this and you've ever been used as the middle person, this is for you. The translator, the buffer, the one everyone leans on so they never have to face each other. I see you, because I watched what it did to my auntie, and I lived close enough to feel the damage myself. Silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's a boundary. Sometimes it's the only language left when every word you speak is twisted, repackaged, and used against you. I learned that watching her step back and refuse to keep explaining herself to people who never listened in good faith. Peacekeeping without consent becomes self-erasure. When you're assigned responsibility you didn't agree to, you don't become noble. You become invisible. My auntie taught me that choosing self-respect can feel like betrayal to people who benefited from your sacrifice. Responsibility has to be voluntary to be healthy. If it's demanded, assumed, or enforced through guilt, it isn't responsibility at all. It's control. And the moment she stopped accepting it, everything changed. I know the fear that comes with disappointing people who rely on you, the panic that if you say no, you'll be labeled selfish, cold, ungrateful. That fear is real, but so is the freedom that comes when you finally refuse roles that were never fair. There is a quiet power in stepping out of patterns before resentment hardens into something you can't undo, in noticing when you're being positioned instead of respected, in seeing the difference between being needed and being valued. Document the truth, keep the messages, remember the timelines, not to weaponize them, but to protect your reality. Reclaim your agency before someone else rewrites your role for you. Walking away isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself when no one else will. It's courage in its quietest form. If you feel trapped between other people's conflicts, hear this clearly. You are not the solution to problems you didn't create. Your peace is not a service anyone is owed.